Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. A lot of updates since the last time we did one of these, so we're going to get right to it. Bushiroad has announced Bushiroad Rumble. It'll be an online tournament. Weiss will have a 2-day weekend, as well as the 3 different Vanguard formats. This is going to be the next officially sanctioned Bushiroad event. No date on it yet, which is significant for reasons that we will get to in a little bit concerning releases. Will be this fall, presumably will replace what would have been in-person regionals. They've only mentioned that Weiss will take place over one weekend. They've not said how many tournaments. They did not say if they were going to try to do the 3 regions thing again like they did with Springfest. All that we know is that there will be an online event coming to Weiss this fall. So with that, let's get into what everyone's really here for, which is the releases announced this weekend over the Anime Expo stream.
But before we do that, I just want to quick talk about some of the sets that have already been announced, so we kind of have an idea of what's looking forward from where we are right now. So coming up later this month, on July 30th, we have 7 Deadly Sins coming out. We have, coming up in August 20th, we have Fate Heaven's Feel Volume 2. On September 10th, we have That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime Volume 2. Starting in October 1st, Alicization Volume 2. And then, just prior to the release of all of these sets on the stream, we had announced Quintessential Quintuplets coming in at the end of October.
Because of the Data Live reprint that took place in June, a lot of other sets got kind of compressed during this back half of 2021, coming out every 3 weeks instead of every 4, which is why we see this expedited schedule. But like Brandon said, 7 Deadly Sins end of this month, Heaven's Feel next month, and then in September, October, Slime and Alicization respectively. End of October, we're getting Quintuplets. Last time, we recorded before the Quintuplets release, so we only had like a brief blurb that we kind of spliced in afterward to talk about the Quintessential set. In addition to that set, Quintuplets will be getting a standard booster pack as well. The rarities in that booster pack, however, are going to be a little different from what we're used to. You honestly should just go watch Lunchbox's video over on English Weiss Schwarz, his channel link in the description. He made a video going into detail on how all of the Quintuplets rarities work and how the booster packs are going to be laid out. So worth checking out if you're interested in Quintuplets, again, link in the description. That out of the way, now let's look at what was announced this weekend over the Anime Expo stream. There were 6 sets that were either announced or given a release date. And we'll start with November's release, Data Bullet Extra Booster, coming to English because Data Live needed help.
So yeah, playable with Data Live. Worth noting that with this set coming into English, it's coming into the still currently unbanned Data Live, which is something it did not come into in JP. So a lot of the JP lists that played around with Data Bullet were under the ban list. With the supports that this extra booster brings, it could potentially affect and change what Data Live looks like in English.
A lot of really nice choice support coming into English with Data Bullet. Dal didn't need this. It really didn't, but here we are. Bushiroad decided to print Data Live knowing, and they themselves acknowledged, we're going to monitor the situation, as it were, because of how powerful this set is. They haven't done anything yet. They haven't really given any indication that they're going to, despite the fact that Dal completely dominated Springfest. And now with the addition of even more tech to make that even stronger, to make 8 choice really viable, this set just got a lot more powerful. And I don't know what the response needs to be by Bushiroad. They may need to do something. Exactly what? I don't know, because there isn't really a good option here. You can either print something that counters it, or you can institute a ban list. So Bushiroad has put themselves between a rock and a hard place with the Data Live release in English already. They've made it worse with Data Bullet. We'll see how they respond, if they respond, or if we're all just going to be playing Data Live for the next year. But that aside, we have our English exclusive for winter of 2021. We're getting Ruby in English. This is something, Brandon, that we talked about as a potential set back when we did our show several months ago now on potential English exclusives. Link to that in the description. We talked about Ruby as a legitimate possibility. It's never had a true TCG. It had something like a deck builder for a while that didn't really go very far. Interesting license, a lot of early hype around this title.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been a lot of hype around this set, really especially with some of the different flavors that the set could bring into Weiss and some of the different mechanics that can be played around with, especially in light of the current atmosphere around the card game.
This always made sense. 4 colors, 4 main characters. It's an easy fit. I think this was a no-brainer for Bushiroad. And it's going to be popular. It's going to get played. And also, now that you may remember when Seven Deadly Sins was announced, we were really hesitant on it, whether or not it would actually be good, because the history of English releases had been pretty spotty. Cardcaptor was pretty okay. Adventure Time's been pretty good, but that's really it. The other English exclusives have been honestly pretty bad. But what we're seeing in the Seven Deadly Sins previews that we've so far, it's actually rather powerful. Like, Seven Deadly Sins could make a real play in the meta on release. And we're going to talk a lot more about Seven Deadly Sins this month because we've got 5 cards, 5 minutes, and a deck tech and gameplay and stuff. So we'll talk plenty about Seven Deadly Sins during July. Given that Adventure Time has done well and at least been, good and meta relevant, and that Seven Deadly Sins looks like it's going to be at the very least good and meta relevant, Ruby is going to be worth paying attention to in terms of potential meta viability as well. Obviously, no cards have been released. We have absolutely no idea what this deck is going to look like, what this set is going to be able to do. But English exclusives are not a punchline anymore. Following that up, into the new year we go. Finally, Morphonica and Raise a Sullen, which have been sitting on the sideline for so long, waiting for their release date. It's been announced. It will also be coming out with the Roselia and Poppin' Party stuff. All of that drops in one thing in January. Morphonica trial deck and an extra booster for the rest of the Bang Dream stuff. Bang Dream fans rejoice, y'all got another set.
And that's slated to come in kind of that January time frame. So looking into the new year, kind of with Bang Dream kind of kicking off that list. The last 3 that were announced all about that same time have been Rent a Girlfriend, Mushoku Tensei, and Hololive. All of those without dates, but looking at 2022 as their potential releases. Hololive, we know a little bit about, like the 7 different types of trial decks that are going to exist, as well as the booster pack. So looking forward to a lot of Hololive as that comes out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because given what Bushiroad did with the quintessential set for Quintuplets and their 5 trial decks, I find it interesting that they're going to release the Hololive trial decks as their 7 trial decks on their own kind of individual basis, as opposed to trying to make a set out of it. So I think they think that they can get them to sell, that those will be movable on their own, as opposed to Quintuplets, which maybe they thought, some of the decks might sell better than others. I think they think all of the Hololive trial decks are going to be sold.
I think there's some reasoning behind this as well. With quintessential Quintuplets, they all kind of came together with the same anime. Whereas more like Hololive, you really have kind of these more individual VTubers, which may have their own individual followings. Because you're going to get fans of the series that are more fans of a specific character. I think you get a little bit more of that kind of devotion to characters with individuals on this level of Hololive. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out and how that plays out in JP, because that comes out in JP relatively soon. So looking forward to some of these new sets coming out into 2022. We expected we were going to get like maybe 1 or 2 announced at this stream, not the 6 that we received. So we're actually pleasantly surprised by this, as well as kind of being able to map out into the future kind of what's coming our way.
Yeah, it's nice to know the future of releases, because the further out you know, the better you can plan what you're going to spend your limited resources on. Obviously, we don't have dates yet for Rent a Girlfriend, Mushoku Tensei, or Hololive, but we basically have the schedule through April-ish. So into next spring, we at least know what titles will be in existence next spring. Now, that kind of brings us back to talking about Rumble, which they announced on the same stream over the weekend. Because Rumble takes place in the fall, but we don't have a date for it yet, I don't think any of these are going to be available for that. It makes sense that this event would take place probably in September, because that's when most regionals take place. But it could take place as late as October. It also depends on which weekend it gets slotted in, because there are going to be 4 different weekends. So if it gets, a late August, early September versus a late September, early October, that could affect whether or not Slime 2 or Alicization 2 is available for that event. And just as importantly, they have not said anything about a potential Worlds tournament in the spring.
Not knowing the date on when the online Rumble is going to be drastically affects kind of what is likely to be played in the meantime with that. If it's in September, October time frame, which I think is a relatively reasonable expectation, the additions of Slime and Alicization, I think, are at least notable. Slime still making moves as it does. Alicization, I think, still prevalent and relevant with what we've been seeing so far in English. So both of those sets likely to make an impact, but whether or not it can drastically change or affect what's going on with representation, I think still remains to be seen yet. Especially looking at the last online tournament that we had such a high representation from Data Live. With the upcoming support that Data Live is going to receive, I think it's very likely that we could potentially see an increase in that kind of representation with Data Bullet's release. Plus the reprint, plus all of the other different factors that could potentially be brought in with that. I would not be surprised if by the time of the online Rumble that Data Live's representation has increased, and therefore probably the likely number of tops also would increase.
I think that makes sense. I also think that given the fact that Data Bullet will be coming out in November, I'm wondering how many people are going to pivot to something that is from Data Bullet specifically, because Bullet has a really nice choice top end that makes 8 choice really viable. So I wonder how that could affect things. Will there be people who will strictly be working on a post Data Bullet DAO list, and thus maybe not bother bringing DAO to Rumble just because it won't have all of its pieces yet? Or will more people stick with the current Data Live list, maybe tech in a few things from Data Bullet, but overall the deck itself doesn't change that much? I don't know, because both are insane, and we can't really use the Japanese meta to tell us much.
Not as much post-ban list.
Yeah, and that's assuming that we don't get a Data Live ban list, which is also always on the table. Because if there was ever a set in English that needed to get hit with a ban list, it would be Data Live. It's on the table, and Bushiroad themselves, like they said, are monitoring the situation, whatever that means. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but the long and the short of it is, once we have a date for Rumble, we will know what sets will and will not be playable during said Rumble. I think it's pretty safe to assume that Heaven's Feel will be out by then. But Slime and Alicization, we don't know. It depends on when Rumble happens and what weekend Weiss gets. Weiss was the first weekend for Springfest, so they might put it at the first weekend again. We have no real way of knowing, so we're just going to kind of let it be, and we're going to see what happens. But I would be very surprised if anything quintuplets or later was playable at Rumble. And again, who knows what happens with Worlds. As of right now, there has been no announcement one way or the other. Given that Japan is still struggling with COVID stuff, more than a lot of other places in the world, it wouldn't surprise me if we didn't see a Worlds until 2023, which is wow. The fact that we could legitimately go 3 full years without a Worlds competition. But here we are. This is the world that we're in right now. So here's hoping that we can get something for Worlds, but the way things are right now, with no announcement and no seeming way to qualify for those Worlds tournaments, it doesn't look super likely. But we have Rumble, and we still have locals. Nothing announced at like the shop level for now. No new shop leagues or anything like that. So locals are going to be more or less casual, it seems, for the time being, until Bushiroad announces something new. In the meantime, hopefully you got your dice bags. We recently got ours. They're pretty nice. But yeah, I believe that's everything for us. We will return on Thursday with our first look at 7 Deadly Sins cards on 5 cards, 5 minutes. Next Tuesday, I will have a deck tech. We'll have gameplay for that deck tech the following Thursday, and then in 2 weeks back with another Clock Talk. Until then, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.